Hi everyone. So in this video, we're going to be talking about metaphors and similes. I'm going to be introducing you to the idea of metaphors and similes. So many of you are kind of many of you already know something about metaphors and similes, but I do want to kind of just review what's happening with them. So in general, a metaphor is going to be when we're going to be comparing two things, and we make that comparison without using like or as. I have metaphors over here, but let me just start with maybe the simile, which on some level is easier because we can see the comparison. So if I say the snow is like a white blanket, okay, you know that I'm making a comparison. I've got this word like in here, and it says, look, this snow has some of the same qualities as this white blanket. Okay, and so the like shows us that we're making some of that comparison. Life is like a highway. Okay, she sings like an angel. You can also use the word as. He is as strong as an ox, right? And so the word as does the same thing. It's going to tell us that we're making some comparison. How strong is this guy? As an ox. I'm going to compare his strength to the strength of an ox. And so we use those words like or as to show us very clearly that we're making some kind of a comparison. Those are fairly easy sometimes for us to understand because we understand the idea of making comparison, and there's a word there to tell us specifically that that's what we're going to be doing. What's more difficult sometimes is when we have metaphors which are similar, right? They operate in basically the same way. Oftentimes, when we're speaking, we'll use the two words somewhat interchangeably. That is, we might say, let's talk about metaphorical language, and we mean metaphors and similes. But if we look at metaphors, we can see similar things to what we had before. The snow is a white blanket. I took the word like out. Okay, the snow is a white blanket. Now, we would never think, I mean, maybe small children might think this, that there's an actual blanket out there. When it snows, there's a blanket out there. There's not a blanket out there. I'm saying, imagine a blanket, and that's kind of what it looks like outside, right? What it looks like. I've just left the like out. That's the thing that gets us confused sometimes with metaphors, is that we don't have the words like or as, so it's easy to forget that we're doing a comparison. Again, when you've got the like or as, it's very easy to figure out what we're doing. So life is a highway, same as I had before, life is like a highway. I say simply life is a highway. And you go, well, obviously life isn't a highway. And so you're supposed to, in your mind, say, wait, oh, so this is a metaphor. The sun in the west was a drop of burning gold. Right? Wouldn't think that the sun actually was a drop of burning gold. That wouldn't make any kind of sense. And so we're going to say it really looked like a drop of burning gold, except I dropped the like out. And on some level, when you drop the like out, it makes it more vivid. It makes it easier for us to see. Love is a battlefield. Right, that shouldn't be capitalized there. Love is a battlefield, right? We could say love is like a battlefield, but we could just say love is a battlefield. It becomes maybe a bit more vivid when we see that. And so we're supposed to be able to say, well, this is one way of thinking about love, is that it is a lot of contention, a lot of fighting that people might have, right? That's one way to think about love. There are other ways that we can think about love, but at least that's one way that we can have in that particular metaphor. The song, it's an old song you may not know. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, right? If we say that somebody's a hound, this person's actually a dog? No, no, no. They behave in the way that we expect a dog to behave, right? Usually that means that somebody's cheating on somebody or something like that when somebody behaves like a dog. And so when we make that comparison there, we're saying you behave the way a dog does. And so I'm going to say you ain't nothing but a hound dog. Um, um, you ain't you well you keep away from her because she's a rat trap if I ever seen one, right? This person's an actual rat trap. Well, no, she's not an actual rat trap. She has some qualities that one might suggest of a rat trap, and so what is it that this person's going to be doing? Life is a climb, but the view is great, right? Life isn't really a climb, right? Life is this bigger, more complicated thing. We're going to say it's like that. And so again, we that's something that we understand on some level, right? We know how that works, but sometimes it's easy to forget that that's what's going on because we don't actually again see the like in there. When we see the like, it becomes easier. Again, back to the simile, and it seemed to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, right? Similar to the life of somebody who had a candle in the wind, right? And so I understand that we are making comparison. This person's life isn't actually a candle in the wind, but they lived their life like that, right? And we make that comparison. So again, just keep that in mind. That concept is relatively easy, but then as we go through to some of the specific examples, it might be things might get a little bit more challenging. So if you look at the reading that we had that I gave you on Introduction to Figurative Language, Metaphors, and Similes. Let's look at this passage from Shakespeare's Macbeth that is going to make use of simile and metaphor. And let's think about what it does here. So it says, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all of our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Um, and let's just, the first part is really just saying tomorrow, tomorrow, and tomorrow. The days keep going. Creeps in this petty pace from day to day. They just keep going, right? This petty pace, this slow pace that we move through time. And they keep going when? To the last syllable of recorded time. Realize that syllable of recorded time is a metaphor because time doesn't have syllables. Words have syllables. And so when we say the last syllable of recorded time, Shakespeare is going to be making a comparison between, let's say, the seconds of a clock, right? The seconds of time, and talk about those as being syllables, almost as if we can hear time moving forward through words. And so that itself is a metaphor. He doesn't explicitly say that, but by saying the syllable of recorded time, that's what he means. Now, that's one of the reasons why this gets confusing, because you say the last syllable of time. What do you mean? What does that mean, the last syllable of time? And you go, oh, that is a metaphor. Syllables apply to words, but he is using that word that usually applies to words, that usually applies to language, and he is applying it to time, right? As if time has syllables. And so you can see how the metaphorical language can potentially trip us up there. To the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. All that time that we have lived in the past is just moving us forward towards death. So on some level, it really is just saying in here is death is inevitable. That's where all of our life goes to. All these minutes that we live, everything that we go through in life is doing nothing but leading us towards death. That's all that happens. So that's what's happening in those first parts. But then let's look where we can see some of this metaphorical language more explicitly. Then he says here, out, out, brief candle. What candle? When are you talking about a candle? Well, if we think about what we've been saying here about how life leads towards death, and that's the only possibility, when he talks about out, out, brief candle, he's talking about life. Life is, to turn it into a simile, like a candle that doesn't last very long and it blows out. It's gone. That's what people are dying like. Out, out, brief candle. That's our life is going to be over. And then he's going to pick up with another metaphor. Life's but a walking shadow. Life is a walking shadow. And so life is a shadow. That's a metaphor. Life really isn't a shadow, but it's a shadow that walks, right? It moves around. It seems like something's happening, but it doesn't have any depth. It doesn't have any substance. It's just a shadow. It's a pretty dismal view of what life is like. So life is but a walking shadow. And then he's going to have another metaphor. A poor player, which is an actor, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. So what he's saying here, if we turn it into the simile, which makes it clearer, life is a bad actor, right? A poor player is a bad actor that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, walks around on the stage, acting like he knows what he's doing, right? And then is heard no more. It goes away, disappears. Again, a dismal view about what's going on with life if it's like a bad actor that's going around doing something, but it doesn't actually mean anything, right? It is a tale, life is a tale told by an idiot, somebody who's not very bright, that is full of sound and fury. There's a lot of stuff going on here, but it signifies nothing, right? Life is a story told by somebody who's not very bright, somebody who's going to be stupid, full of sound and fury. There's a lot of stuff going on in this story, but it doesn't mean anything. It's a pretty dark vision about what's going on with life here. And it says this passage might be summarized as life has no meaning, but a brief paraphrase does not take into account the figurative language that reveals the depth of his despair, right? To really understand the depth of what's going on here, we have to think about that figurative language. And so he has said, yes, life is meaningless. But if I just say life is meaningless, well, life is meaningless. But if I talk about life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more, I'm saying something that potentially seems more meaningful, right? So you can see how the figurative language can be difficult here, but it is ultimately going to help us understand something at a deeper level. If we look at this quick poem that Margaret Atwood has here, you fit into me like a hook into an eye, a fish hook, an open eye. Um, One of the things we have to think about, let me go back to this page here. If you look at this is the kind of hook and eye that she's going to be talking about. You've seen something like this that holds a door closed, right? A cabinet door closed or something like that. That's what she means, a hook and eye. You fit into me like a hook and an eye. And you might think, oh, that sounds kind of pleasant. They work together very well, right? These two people are meant for each other. This hook can't do anything, can't keep the door closed unless there's an eye here. And so these things seem to work together. But in the poem, she's going to say, you fit into me like a hook into an eye, a fish hook, an open eye, right? So she's saying that's the nature of this relationship. Being in this relationship with this other person is like having a fish hook stuck in your eye. That's not a very pleasant relationship. It's a little funny in some ways that she's going to say that, a little dark, but it does give us a sense of how she's going to use that metaphor to help us understand the nature of the relationship in a deeper way than we might otherwise understand it. So just keep all this in mind about how metaphors and similes operate, and realize that at times, if you're going to be confused about something that we're going to be seeing in a poem, oftentimes that's going to be because you've got metaphorical language, and we have a tendency to want to try and take that literally. If we back up and say, oh, wait, this is a metaphor, then we understand things more clearly.